Hello, love. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jennifer Laurel Keller, and I'm an acrylic and mixed media artist and online instructor. In this video, I'm unveiling my latest series of mixed media works, which is called Field Notes. And I'm going to speak a little bit about why I love this series, how I make the pieces, and what I use to make them. So think of this video as if you were at an artist talk at my studio, and all of the pieces are also up in my online shop, which is linked below, and you can tour those as well, just like attending a gallery show. Okay, so a little backstory. Last winter, I was having so much fun with mixed media. I was making classes like crazy and creating in my art journal. And I was playing with vintage papers and decorative art papers with beautiful textures and patterns, which are so incredibly tactile and interactive. I love the discovery part of seeking out the perfect materials and colors for collage. And it's like being on a scavenger hunt or a detective looking for clues. So I created those classes and got through a lot of the techniques that I wanted to share with you on Skillshare. And then I found myself at a place where I was having so much fun with mixed media, but I really missed landscape painting. And I didn't want to have to choose between one or the other. So I decided to put them together into the same pieces so that I could play and challenge myself with more of the range of what I'm capable of, both with painting and collage. So the first piece that I tried, I created a seascape in collage and then painted the details in the scene over the top of it in acrylic paint, so both the collage and the painting were in the same space on the canvas. And I really liked the results, and many of you did too, actually. Thank you for the comments on Instagram. The lace is very eye-catching and something that I don't think I'd ever seen before, so it's a bit unusual as well. But then I decided that I wanted to take the process a little bit further. So I changed the composition so that the collage is below the landscape. And that's when something very interesting happened. So this was the next one and the catalyst into the series. So by changing the composition, a beautiful thing happened that I was not anticipating. This curious juxtaposition occurred where the area at the bottom of the piece brought up a few questions, like, is that area below ground, like a cross-section of the earth? Is it a collection of objects that were found while beachcombing? And it was reminding me of an archaeological dig, or maybe a collection of notes and data found by a biologist or a historian out in the field. So it felt like I was sifting through these environments and creating field journals which had a combination of art, science, and history in them. And I think those disciplines have always influenced and fed off of each other. So I decided to call the series Field Notes. And going out in the field is something that artists, scientists, and historians do. We have to interact with the world and collect data, which has a sense of mystery and wonder that we're trying to understand and interpret. And then as viewers, we can make connections from those field notes and come up with stories about what occurred at these places over time, both in natural history and human history. And I love how they invoke both time and space, because the natural world is so old, but the life that occupies the land evolves and changes. And I suppose the land does too, but life evolves and changes. And also over time, objects physically decompose and sink down into the earth, which is like a metaphor for stories and memories as well. So it's pretty cool. So I hope that gives you a little insight into the series as a whole. So let's talk about the process. So the first thing I do is a rough sketch of the composition so that I know where the landscape and collage areas of the piece will go. And next I begin at the top with the sky. Here I'm looking for lighter papers to collage that have texture and smaller patterns. And It's not an area where I'm looking for large focal points, but rather little whispers of collage that someone can look up close at and notice the small details. And then I do the same thing down below, but here I'm looking for more color, and I don't want anything in this first layer that I would be sad if it got covered up because I hide a lot of this. So again, no big focal points, just interesting patterns that will peek through later. After that, I switch to acrylic paint and I work on the sky first. So I come through with a thin layer of different blues, allowing the papers to peek through. And there are interesting phrases and visuals in those papers, so I want you to be able to read them for the most part. And I use drips and variations of blues to pick up the textures in the embossed and crinkly papers. Okay, next I'm on to the landscape. So I do like to work from a reference photo, usually of places I've been to, which makes it all more personal. And I start with blocking out the landscapes with the shadow color, so the darkest color that I see in that area. And then after that dries, I go over the top with lighter and brighter colors as I bring in more details. And then with the water, I add the reflections from the sky, which are always done using the blues that I used in the sky. So the water reflections are the same exact color as the sky. After the landscape, I have a palette full of wet paint. So I use the same colors and do a layer over the collage down below. And here I want to blur the edges of the papers in my collage so they're more seamless, as well as to harmonize the color palette with what I used up above. And that makes the painting a lot more cohesive. And while that dries, I start to assemble the collage focal points. And when the canvas is dry, I bring them over the top and make my adjustments. So here I'm looking for a narrative, but also balance, contrast, and composition. And finally, I always end my pieces by bringing in a little bit more contrast. So I bring up my highlights and I bring my shadows down so that it makes the piece pop. All right, so lastly, I'm going to quickly introduce each individual piece. I don't have time to go really in depth into each one because there's a lot of interesting little tidbits in each collage. But YouTube only gives me 15 minutes per video because I don't have 1,000 subscribers yet. So if you want, you can take a second to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you get all of my episodes, and eventually I can do longer videos. And if you want to look more closely at these pieces, I've linked each painting's listing in my online shop, and I'll write more about the collages and each little component in the descriptions, and you'll be able to view the close-ups there. So the first piece is the precursor piece. I call it Sonoma Coast. It is an 11 by 14 collage and acrylic painting on stretched canvas. This is a more straightforward seascape that is inspired by the Sonoma Coast State Park, where I took a hike along the bluffs, and there's actually another video that I did about its creation. So if you like this one, you can see more in that video, and I'll link that down below as well. And like I said, the collage is mixed media with paint to create some beautiful textures. Next, I made this piece, which did sell. So really quickly, it's called Collecting, and it's the first in the Field Notes series. And the landscape is from Moonstone Beach, which is in Humboldt County. It's a 16 by 20 inch canvas and was created in April of 2021, as are most of the pieces in this series. And I thought it was important to include because it's the first in the series, even though it did sell. So it gives you an idea of the timeline. All right, after that, I did this piece, which is titled Secret Cove. I almost hate to tell people where the reference photos were taken because you might connect it with another location on the coast that's meaningful to you. All of California's coastline looks somewhat similar, that's why I decided to stop titling paintings based on their location, because if it means something to you at a different location, you can still, take on that energy with it. But anyway, I'll tell you all the same. This one is from Mendocino, looking north from a place called Cypress Grove. I absolutely love the water in this one, and it has a lot of natural elements in the collage, as well as a poem about being a vagabond or like a wandering traveler. And it's 16 by 20 inches and will be linked below if you want to take a closer look. Next, we have a piece called Changing Tides. This has beautiful rocks and a lovely beach, and it's chock full of interesting imagery down below. You could look at this over and over again and still find something new each time. I drew the large flower, and there are also dried flowers in it, an old photo of a woman, documents, and even this funny little drawing that a child did of their mom, which I couldn't resist. And this one is linked below also for a closer look. Next, I have a beach scene called Swept Away. This one is inspired from my online class, Beach Day, which is all about painting a scene that looks out to sea. So there's no actual location on this one. It could be anywhere out in the world on a beach. And we have lots of goodies down below, which are also up for interpretation. And you can get more insights on this one in the pieces listing, also in my online shop. There's also this smaller piece. This is an 11 by 14, and I call it Uncovered. It's from a place called Cowboy Camp in Colusa County. I took a nice hike there in March while it was still nice and green, and I even found a deer skeleton that day, so that was kind of cool. It has the classic California hills and some interesting components down below, and this one is in my shop as well. And finally, I have this last piece that you saw me working on in this video called True North. It's about finding your joy, or your own true north, as they say. The landscape is at Big River in Mendocino, just before it empties into the Pacific Ocean. And I wish there was more time to go in depth on this one. All of the pieces are so interesting. So once again, you can see this up in my shop and read the descriptions for more insights. All right, so that is everything. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my new series and its unveiling. Please feel free to leave me comments. I invite you to stop by and take a closer look, just as if you were at a gallery reception. I had so much fun making these. Thank you for joining me. Much love.